What makes someone reach beyond the boundaries of human experience to face the unknown? As children, we question the world around us. We learn, we accept, and gradually we lose our capacity for wonder. But some do not. The explorers, the seekers of truth. It is these pioneers who define the future of mankind.
It's your rising star. As you walk around this great big world, you start to understand. You have to hold on tight.
Hi everybody, and welcome to another edition of The Slice. I'm Bill Peters, your host, and today we're talking about Charles Hoy Fort. His theories and observations are the impetus that started the Fortean Society, which he was offered the presidency of and he put down. I'll be talking about that further. We're just going to go over a little bit of his background so that folks can see how he paved or began at least the clearing of the land for the roadway that we're following today with our UFO research and ancient alien concepts, which he came up with 40 years or more before von Daniken wrote his book. So let's go into this report. I've included some pictures that should help visualize what I'm talking about. So let's start with this. Okay, so here's what we got. We have the very first ufologist and paranormal investigator that we know of. The name, Charles Hoy Fort. Now, Fort was mostly unknown in his own time, but he was kind of rediscovered in 1947, and he's become revered as a master of the study of strange phenomena and UFOs. He had a pretty timid and withdrawn personality, but his mind was definitely bold, and he postulated solutions to a lot of the different mysteries of the earth. According to his biographer, who was Damian Knight, Fort was built like a walrus, an utterly peaceable and sedentary man. He lived quietly with his wife, almost never went out or had visitors, spent the mornings working at home, afternoons in the library, and yet this unlikely character had a vivid imagination that was caught by every aspect of the anomalous, the bizarre, the occult, and the unexplained that fascinates so many today. Alright. So, due to Fort's wide range of interests, the word Fortean is used to describe the study of strange phenomena. And that's found in every branch of our alternative studies. Now this guy, I'll tell you what, here's a brief selection from Fort's writings. The appearance of people from nowhere and the disappearance of people into nowhere, spontaneous human combustion, unidentified flying objects, discoveries of America before Columbus, lights on the moon, stigmatic wounds, rains of stones, blood, manna, or animals from the sky, people with paranormal abilities, wolf children and wild men, teleportation and flights of objects, visions, levitations, and other alleged miracles are what we seek answers to. Okay, so that covers just about everything. Okay, so Fort was born in 1874 in Albany, New York, and a fairly prosperous family of Dutch immigrants. Um, throughout his depressing childhood, really, Fort suffered much physical punishment from his father, so he was pretty much abused constantly. So he hated authority with a passion. So when he was 18, he left home, hitchhiked around the world, and in his words, as he saw it, to put some capital into the bank of experience. One day, he boasted to a bedridden neighbor of his travels, but the man wasn't very impressed. He too had traveled when he was younger, but it was only when he was confined to his room that he began to extract lasting values from his experiences. And Fort liked that very much, and he later wrote, "I realized that one should not scatter oneself upon all life, but center upon some one kind of life and know it thoroughly." And for the next 35 years of his life, that's what he did. When he turned 23 in 1897, Ford had read every scientific book and journal he could find, and within a few years had amassed 25,000 notes on the infallible public face of authoritarian science. He burned them because they were not what I wanted, he said. And so he resumed what he called his grand tour, which was reading through the world's major newspapers and scientific journals, taking notes. And so by 1915, he had several tens of thousands of notes. And so he began writing 2 books. One was called X and explored the idea that life on Earth had been controlled by events or beings from Mars. The other was called Y. In this book, Fort presented evidence indicating that a sinister civilization existed at the South Pole. And that's interesting considering Operation High Jump, which was many, many, many years later. Well, not that far, much later, I guess. We're talking about 1915, so that's long before. He wrote to a friend of his, Theodore Dreiser, and he was an influential American novelist. He commented to him, "You have at least one thing to be thankful for. I might have begun with A." Which means he could have kept going. Yeah. Well, about that time, Fort's luck turned. Uncle died, leaving him just enough income to relieve him from the worry of earning his daily money and or just paychecks. Anyway, he ran into a few roadblocks publishing his 2 books. They were a bit unusual. So, Fort burned the manuscripts of X and Y and promptly began a third, gleaned from his fabulous collection of notes. Dreiser was taken with this new work, though, the Book of the Damned. And some of you may have read this. And he persuaded a publisher to issue it, and they did. So it appeared in 1919, and most critics didn't even know what to make of the thing. It was obviously giving a radical critique of contemporary science, but it was fragmented and choppy and hard to follow. So the thing about Fort is that he was pretty cynical about scientific explanations. He noted quite frequently that scientists argued for and against various theories, facts, and kinds of phenomena according to their own beliefs rather than the rules of evidence. And he found that ridiculous. He was particularly appalled at the way in which any datum that did not fit into one scientist's view or the collective view was totally ignored. So dating something was, not allowed, I guess. So he didn't like the fact that so much science was suppressed even in that day. And which tells you a little bit about what they're suppressing now, I guess, huh? This guy didn't like to be told what to think, and he expected his readers to think for themselves, basically. He presented ideas and let them run with it. His favorite technique was to state the bald facts flatly and then criticize them according to their validity and usefulness. Then he would present some expert's case or explanation and put in opposition to it a few, often very fantastic theories of his own, based on precisely the same evidence. Whether the results gripped the reader's belief or sense of humor, he left that up to them. So, it's one of those what if, or if this, then what, you know. He expressed doubts about Darwinian theory. And in the Book of the Damned, he also anticipated that the von Daniken premise of ancient astronauts by over 40 years. And he imagined that the forts of Scotland had been destroyed in some ancient space war. He wrote that he thought we were property, and that once upon a time this earth was no man's land, that other worlds explored and colonized here, and fought amongst themselves for possession, but now it's owned by something else, and all others are warned off. It's an interesting concept. What do you think? In the book Wild Talents, he elaborated. I now have a theory, he writes, of themselves that men never did evolve from lower animals, but that in early and plastic times a human being from somewhere else appeared upon this earth, and that many kinds of animals took him for a model and rudely and grotesquely imitated his appearance. So that today, though a gorilla of the Congos and of Chicago are only caricatures of some of the rest. Well, no, I don't think so. You can't consciously choose to follow something or someone. So, the year after the publication of the Book of the Damned, he kind of got depressed, and he burned 40,000 of his notes, and he set sail for London. And he started working his way through the British Museum. It took him 8 years as he made hundreds of passes, widening into new subjects and new correlations to back up other correlations. His belief in the eventuality of space travel developed during this time, and he was sometimes heard to be giving forth on the subject of a crowd that just didn't understand a darn word of what he was talking about. During this time, he wrote New Lands, and it was the least successful and most crank part of his books. It was largely a satirical attack upon the paucity of astronomers and such. Now, long before the term psychic warfare was coined, Charles Hoy Fort came up with the startling idea of harnessing psychic powers to conquer the enemy. He envisioned a fighting unit of poltergeist girls on the battlefield. And a squad of poltergeist girls, and they pick out a fleet out of the sea. Blah, blah, blah. A regiment burst into flames. What's funny about that is that when he made that statement, he was actually interviewed by some people from the government about his ideas, which is quite interesting. The Fortean Society was started the year before he died in 1931, and Dreiser and another novelist, Tiffany Thayer, and they launched the Fortean Society. Now, they nominated him for presidency of it, and he declined. And he had fought against a similar organization a couple of years before that. But in 1926, Edmund Hamilton was discussing the growing number of people who had read Fort and wished to pursue some of his ideas. And Fort wrote, "That we shall ever organize does not seem likely to me. The great trouble is that the majority of persons who are attracted are the ones we do not want. Spiritualists, fundamentalists, people who are revolting against science, not in the least because they are affronted by the myth stuff of the sciences, but because scientists either oppose or do not encourage them. Nevertheless, they have founded the Fortean Society and enjoyed much success in its early years. But they are championed even more cranky ideas. The flat earth is what killed them, and that was not necessarily one of Fort's ideas. And she published that in the Fortean Society journal called Doubt. Anyway, this all petered out when he died in 1959. Today, we can appreciate the method in Fort's madness. I mean, we've seen some of his wildest data in a much wider context. We have more information now than we did then. And in another 50 years, we'll have more than yet. But we'll still have questions. There's so much more about Fort because he had an interesting theory about the vitrified forts in the Highland region of Scotland. And the vitrified forts were exposed to in excess of 5,000 degrees for at least 10 seconds. Now, Fort was also one to talk about the lights in the sky. He saw things moving on the surface of the moon, saw UFOs. He was quite intrigued by Marco Polo's escapades in the 13th century when they had found these strange creatures and such things that we've never seen since. Intelligent creatures, by the way. So, all through history, we see the ghosts and the UFOs and the unreal beasts, or the unknown beasts. And we've called them demons, we've called them monsters. But Fort called them science. Folks, this is Bill Peters with a quick biography of Charles Hoy Fort and his early beginnings and why we should be listening to some of these older ufologists that, well, he was so much more than a ufologist. You know, he talked about dimensional beings, and he talked about with the ghosts being remembrances. He talked about the soul. He talked about all this stuff. He talked about ancient aliens and how they predated humans. Excuse me. Point is that I've also believed that many of the races here were colonists. I definitely believe that. As some of you know. Okay, so that's our show today, and thanks for coming by and visiting us here at The Slice. I would direct you to check out some other things out there. Clarence Mitchell has a show on Blog Talk Radio called Closer Encounters. You might want to look that up and listen to some old shows and maybe tune in for the new shows. You also want to check out both the Dharma Cafe, that's DHARMA Cafe. You can link to that through a site called www.therealmj12, the number 12, eyes-to-the-sky.com. And go there and you'll check out a site that was developed by Matthew Bowers, and you'll find a link there also to Dharma Cafe, which talks about enlightenment and energies, and there's all kinds of cool videos, cool pics on all these sites. Some cool music as well. So, do check all that out. You might want to check out Decoding the Truth with Mike Volbeat. It's got some great information there as well. And check out books by Bruce Fenton. And also, please do check out, go to the Ecuador Relief page that you can find posted. And please do help out if you can. And due to the tragic earthquakes and devastation that's been ravaging that area of the world. Yeah, there's a lot of people heading down, but there's not near enough help. People are still dying through all kinds of reasons. Some of it being not being able to get water, food, and so on. So please, if you can, some people I know are broke, but those that can, you can donate time or money. There are organizations taking volunteers with them to help the effort down there. I believe most of them might have already launched. There was a ton, I know, but it's still not near enough help, so whatever you can do. So anyway, that's the show for this week, and see you next week with episode number 65 of The Slice. Take care, folks.
What makes someone reach beyond the boundaries of human experience to face the unknown? As children, we question the world around us. We learn, we accept, and gradually we lose our capacity for wonder. But some do not. The explorers, the seekers of truth. It is these pioneers who define the future of mankind.
It's your rising star. As you walk around this great big world, you start to understand. You have to hold on tight.